Often we think about creating a budget as a singular exercise for a point in time, for one specific, task at hand. But if we take a moment to think strategically, we can develop a budget that supports the longevity of the project and also supports our overall downtown revitalization efforts. First things first, we need to break down two types of costs, direct and indirect. Let's use a typical downtown community event to explain the differences. Direct costs are hard costs directly attributable to the event, like supplies, rentals, printing, etc. These costs by themselves do not reflect the true cost of the event. We need to consider the indirect costs which are incurred that are not easily identifiable with the project. These are things like staff time, technology subscriptions, rent, etc. By considering both direct and indirect costs, you can develop a budget that captures the true cost of your initiative. For this example, if your event is intended to raise funds, you now know exactly how much you need to raise to earn a surplus. Additionally, we're all very used to creating an expense budget, but we have to think about what is the revenue needed that is going to be supporting all of this work. We'll be discussing fundraising in the upcoming months, but having our true costs budgeted is the first step. Next, similarly to accounting for direct and indirect costs of our project, we must also consider all phases of the project: planning, implementation, and maintenance. Let's use an example of launching a marketing plan to fill vacant storefronts with new businesses. Here's one way of breaking down the budget into phases. First, in the planning, we have some staff time as we develop the plan. We're hiring a consultant to bring in some market analysis, and you have some money in the food and beverage for community outreach events. And there's also some indirect expenses that are attributed to this phase. Next, in implementation, we're going to hire professional services like a photographer and videographer, a graphic designer, a social media manager, and we're also going to print some banners to market the vacant properties. And in the maintenance phase of the project, we want to keep this ongoing, not just a one-time thing. So we're going to leave in money for a graphic designer and a social media manager, and there's some other costs associated. One of the biggest mistakes people make is focusing only on upfront costs. But what happens when the ads stop running or the website needs an update? Thinking about long-term maintenance keeps your project going strong instead of fizzling out. If creating a budget completely from scratch feels overwhelming, you're not alone. You can definitely start by creating a detailed project plan to help you think through the budget that is needed to fulfill your project. So you can break the project down into phases, you can list out what tasks need to happen, and then estimate the cost for each one. Once you have a clear project plan, creating a budget becomes much easier because you can focus on one task at a time instead of the whole budget and all the indirect costs all at once. And the next lesson, we're going to go deeper into project planning, but this is where we can help with our budgeting. When you map out costs across all phases, you can make smarter choices. Maybe instead of spending everything on a one-time ad blitz, you spread it over 6 months to keep the momentum going. Or you invest in tools that automate social media so you don't need as much ongoing staff time, for example. So, how do you know what numbers to use? Getting realistic cost estimations can also impact your project strategy. If you know, for example, that you get a quote for something that's completely unrealistic for something you're not going to be able to fundraise for, then you're going to have to pivot on your strategy. So, here are a few tips to get accurate budget estimates. First, reach out to your peers. Ask your peers what they've spent on for similar projects. Get real quotes, reach out to vendors, consultants, service providers, and get price estimates from multiple vendors. And talk to experts. If you're hiring a marketing firm or a contractor or event planner, ask them what's realistic. So to wrap it up, here are four key takeaways. One, include indirect costs like admin, software, and overhead. Two, plan for all phases. Don't just think about launch costs. Three, let your budget shape your strategies. Four, be realistic. Get real quotes and add a buffer for unexpected expenses. Now that you've got the basics, it's time to build your own project budget. Start by creating a project plan, which we'll be going over in the next lesson. Then list out all of your direct and indirect costs, break them into the planning, implementation, and maintenance phases, and look at your collaboration workbook for a budget template to help you get started.